City Council meeting of Monday, April 11th, 2022.
Dave Anderson. Here. Carl Broberg. Here. Jen Mazias.
Here.
Mary McGrath.
Here.
Tom Nymus.
Here.
Karen Novacek.
Here.
Laura Tulowitzki.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. And if everyone could remember to please pull your microphones forward. We still have people online, I believe. And they need to be able to hear us. And now everyone should have a microphone at your place. Next item is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Anyone here from the public? It's not? Oh, I'm so sorry. I skipped the minutes. Next item is approval of minutes.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the minutes of our last meeting, March 14, 2022.
I'll second that.
Motion by Karen and second by Tom. Are there any questions, comments, edits, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, our next item is approval of monthly expenditures via roll call vote.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of the review of the monthly expenditures.
Second.
Motion by Karen and second by Laura. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Laura Tulowitzki.
Aye.
Karen Novacek.
Aye.
Tom Nymus.
Aye.
Mary McGrath.
Yep.
Jen Mazias.
Aye.
Carl Broberg.
Aye.
Dave Anderson.
Aye.
And motion carries. Thank you all for your work on that. Now, our next item is public comment. Is anyone here from the public who would like to speak? If you can just take turns coming up to the microphone, please, and fill out your name. And then we'll see if anyone is online also.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. I'm Bob Mackress. Can you hear me okay?
I'm sure, but the people online have to hear you through the microphone.
Right, okay, so I think I'm okay on the mic. But thank you for the opportunity to talk. My name is Bob Mackress. I live at 500 Woodland Drive here in Washburn, right up adjacent to the tennis courts. I understand folks are going to be talking about improvements to the tennis courts tonight. And I want to go on record right off the bat to say, as the guy who lives next door to them, I approve of the project. I'm happy to hear it. I think it's a fine use of the facility. I think it'll be something good for Washburn. So I'll set your mind to rest on that. One thing though I would like to stress, as the plans are being made, and as the courts go into operation, is remembering that it's a City of Washburn park for the benefit of the people of Washburn, and there needs to be a clear line of accountability and ownership of how the park is run. We have lived in that house for 24 years and have had very, very few problems originating from having that park below us. I love having the park below us. It's nice to look out. I've made friends there. But the only times when we have had problems, it's been very difficult to find someone to deal with it. I'm specifically talking about the tennis operation now. And the only problems we've ever had really revolve around the floodlights. Those are some mighty bright lights. And several years ago when the tennis club put new lights in, one light in particular, just one, aimed straight into my living room window. We cannot use that room when the lights are on. It is so glaring, my wife gets headaches, you can't see the TV. And it would be a simple fix, because all it would take is to move it down a little bit. It would still light up the court, but it wouldn't shine up the hill into our house. I have never found anyone to take responsibility for doing it. Now, this is several years ago, and I'm not talking about anyone who was here in this room, but it was the people who were there then. I called up the city, and it was, well, you're gonna have to talk to the tennis club people. Talk to the tennis club people is, well, that's really not our issue. So I only ask, keep in mind that this is a neighborhood park with lots of neighbors, and we're all citizens of Washburn. And when it's, as they say, when plans are being made and when it's operating, let's make sure there is accountability, ownership, and we can all be good neighbors, and I think it'll be a benefit to the city of Washburn. And I thank you for this opportunity to talk.
Thank you very much. Do we need to sign the paper?
Yeah, Bob, could you make sure you put your name and address?
Whose name should I put?
Yours.
Sure, absolutely.
Put your arms, he's not here.
I'll do that. You talk and I'll make sure to get that in.
Good evening, my name is Anne Marie Edson. I live next door to Mr. Margaret. And my house is above where the new tennis court is going to be put. I can't say I'm real thrilled about losing the green space down there, but we've only been here a couple of years, and what we've seen with the tennis players, they seem to be pretty respectful. My concerns are the same as Bob's. The light is obnoxious. And I would like to see that fixed. And if they're going to build another one, please make sure the lighting is at a level where it's only shining on the tennis court. My other concerns are the timing. I was looking at the ordinances, and I don't know what time the tennis court is allowed to be open till, but the noise ordinance begins at 10 p.m. Hopefully that is enforced. Bob made a comment to me about the timing. The lights are supposed to be on a timer, and the timer doesn't work, and so sometimes the light is on well after 10 o'clock. And so hopefully that will be something that would be checked into. My other concern is noise. Hopefully the tennis courts will be used for the purpose for which they were designed. Last summer or the summer before, it sounded like somebody was having a dance party down there. I don't know if somebody's having dance lessons. Very loud music, yelling at the top of her lungs. I would hope if that's a school dance group, I don't know. I think that would be better done somewhere else than at the tennis court in the neighborhood. Trees. I hate to lose those trees. Are they taking those down it looks like for the plan, the trees that are currently alongside the tennis court are gonna come out?
That is the plan, and technically, we're not supposed to interact with you during public
Sorry.
comment, but we will get into that if you'll stick around for that item on the agenda. We'll talk a little bit more about the plan at that point, but yes, those trees are scheduled to come down, and that is at the request actually of the tennis club, because it causes so many problems with things landing on the court and ruining the surface. So it's definitely something that is going to have to get figured out.
Okay,
And we hate to lose trees, but perhaps we can plant some more.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
While I'm up here, I will say that was a Zumba class last year, the year before. Oh, it was loud. And when those lights went up, we've had people there playing tennis till 1 a.m, and that shouldn't fly.
To call the police?
That would be. Oh. that would be interesting. That's the way it's-
Good evening. My name is Jan Stouffer, and my husband Tom and I live directly adjacent to the east end tennis courts on 3rd Street East. Our property actually goes almost right up to the tennis court fence. We're on the corner. And I would want to go on record, I'm not opposed to tennis courts being built or increased at the Hillside location. I'm very opposed to removing the tennis courts on East 3rd Street. I've lived there since 1996, and over the years, the courts have deteriorated to the point of, I don't play tennis, but they look pretty unusable to me, although people continue to use them. So I'm a little wondering why, and I know you're not going to answer my questions, but I'm wondering why the city would propose additional courts somewhere else when you don't even maintain the property you do own on East 3rd Street well. So that's my first thing. I'd hate to see them go. I watch children, I watch tourists who come up from Memorial Park Campground regularly to use the tennis courts. The neighbors use the tennis courts. Several of our neighbors are here tonight to speak or just be present, but I've also spoken to all the neighbors on my block, and they all oppose losing those tennis courts. We all bought our homes with the idea that there was this recreation there, and eventually I don't know if it was the city or the tennis association added a little basketball court there, and over time, neighborhood kids are out there playing basketball, and there are lights there. Unfortunately, the neighbors on the hillside are having trouble, but we have no trouble with the lights that are there. My garage is between me and the lights, so I don't notice it, but we do enjoy watching people play tennis. And most recently, a lot of pickleball is being played on the decent one tennis court on the one half. School kids are coming from even Bayfield to use those tennis courts during the school year, usually in the spring or the fall. So they are getting used, but because they're in such disrepair, I could see where it might be easy to say, let's just rip them out. But I hate to see that happen. And secondary to that, I have sent all the council members and the mayor my thoughts on this, but for the benefit of everyone here, my second concern is that there be any potential if the tennis courts were removed. There's Autumn Manor, which is owned by the Housing Authority. They have, I don't know how many units they have, but it's a lot. There's an 8-unit privately owned apartment building across the street from Autumn Manor who does not have enough parking for their residents, which is just the way things are. So there's a lot of cars on the street, especially in the summer, it seems like. People tend to stay off the street in the winter, I think, because of the parking regulations with the snow removal. But it's a busy street, and to add more multiple family housing, whether it's 10 units added to the Housing Authority or large privately owned apartment building, it's just too many people living in a small area. Washburn has other vacant lots that if we want to add what has been referred to on social media as workforce housing, there's other places to do it. Extending the Housing Authority, and the Housing Authority board member did call me to ask me what my concerns were, and it said that they would like to extend the Housing Authority. Well, that type of housing does not benefit workforce people. It's low-income housing, it's for senior citizens, it's for disabled people. That is not going to help the working people of Washburn that are just trying to find a place to live unless you are low income. So I don't see it as a solution to the housing issue in Washburn. But I would like the city to review, we do not have storm sewer in that area. And if you took a ride when you leave tonight, you will see my driveway and most of the driveways on that block have a lake at the end of them because there's nowhere for the melting snow to go. The tennis court runoff comes into my yard. I have a lake at the back corner of my yard. I don't complain to the city about it. I like the tennis courts. It eventually goes away, But if you build or allow someone else to build an apartment complex there of any size, I expect I will have more runoff coming into my yard. And rain runoff is a problem. We get taxed for it, or however you want to say it. We pay for it on our water bills that we receive from the city because of the buildings. It's to help keep the water runoff down, so for hard surfaces. So I would hate to see that happen. And the neighbors in that particular block are very opposed to any multifamily housing and the removal of the tennis courts in the first place. So I would ask that the city go ahead, expand the hillside courts, that's wonderful. But are you gonna maintain them any better than you maintain the ones on East Third Street? Do the citizens on the hillside get better treatment than the citizens on the east end closer to downtown? Because you didn't maintain our tennis courts. So thank you for listening.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I don't have a very good voice, excuse me. I'll do the best I can, I'm losing it. My name is Ann Schramm. I live at 322 East 3rd Street in Washburn. My husband and I moved to this residence in what is now called the Historic District in 1985. And I've lived in this location for 36 and a half years. Recently, I read the article in the Ashland Daily Press about the possibility of the relocation of the 3rd Street tennis courts and the possibility of expansion of Autumn Manor on that property if it becomes available. I shared my concerns today at length with Mary McGrath, and she has noted those and can share those with you as individual council members as to why I am opposed to seeing there is more expansion for Autumn Manor. So I won't go and take the time. We already have a long agenda, but Mary has those comments, and I would encourage all of you to either get in touch with you or however you, excuse me, however you communicate with one another. And I listed them specifically and in detail. What I would expect from the council is that no decision or commitment would be made to move forward very much farther in this project in looking at that vacant land should you choose to move the tennis courts up the hill before you talk with the surrounding neighborhoods, get our input, drive down the street at different times of the day, see what we're dealing with traffic, talk to our police department to see what calls they have there. I don't know the statistics on ambulance as far as how many calls are made there, but I've lived there for 36 and a half years, and my institutional memory of what's been going on in our neighborhood, it's a very busy street. We also have the park, which the people in the community have worked hard to create a new look for our park through the years. Yes, we have small children. Yes, parents should watch their children when they're in the park. That's not always the case, or they're left there alone. We have a lot of people parking on the streets, not only on the Autumn Manor side, but on the other side, not only because of the, I don't know about the runoff issue that Jan talked about, but there's congestion in that area, in my opinion, all year round. And so we're maxed out. And if you add another building, where's the parking lot going to go? I have a great empathy for people needing affordable housing, but I think we're maxed out in our neighborhood. And I agree with Jan that we need to maybe, I would encourage you as a council to consider where else you might be placing this so that our neighborhood is not stretched beyond its limits for safety, for aesthetics. We're the historic district. Washburn is proud of that. I live in one of the DuPont 10 homes. And so I, once again, would encourage you to look at our situation carefully. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your comments. Anyone else here in person that would like to make comments or online?
Actually. I'm Kathleen Erickson. I live in those green condos over there, and I've been frustrated by the snowmobiles, and now it's ATV season, and they're already out. They're already driving wherever they want to. I kicked a side-by-side out of our parking lot today. Saw a kid driving down the street who didn't want to drive on the trail like last week because it had snow on it. He turned around and he went, but I don't see anything that says they can just drive anywhere in our ordinance. And there seems to be like no enforcement of the ATV and snowmobile laws, and they go up and down the alley a lot, which is an extremely busy alley, and it's also right directly under my bedroom and living room. And there's a lot of people who live right up on the alley, so it's really hard. And I mean, I wasn't told I was living on a snowmobile route when I bought my place. You know, it's not fair, I don't think, to the people that live here. So that's all I got to say. But I'm just hoping to work on that enforcement, or at least keep them on my alley.
Thank you very much for your comments, appreciate it. Anyone else here in person who would like to make public comment? Anyone online? I can't see behind me. Oh, another one, sure, come on up.
You can't see me. No.
And Tony, should let me help with the microphone.
My name is Glenn Foss, and I have lived at the home right across the street from the tennis court. This has been one of the things about living in that area that I loved. When I was about 7 years old, I watched DuPont build those tennis courts, and my mother was always mad at my brother and I, because don't go by there, it's big, heavy, big trucks and everything else, but I love that tennis court. I used it my whole life, from the time I was 8 years old, and helped get lights put in. We did a lot, the tennis league did a lot to these tennis courts, trying to keep them up. And financially, we just don't have that much money to work with. And, but they have worked a long time, and when they stopped, everything stopped there. They didn't come and cut the trees that were growing inside of the tennis court. They didn't do anything to the grass that was growing in there. Nobody did anything to the place, and so slowly it goes down, and now nobody wants to go there. And they still have pickleball there on Monday nights, and everybody has a wonderful time. They like it there, it's quiet there. The lights have never, ever bothered me. And when I was on the board, I suggested that we have all of the lights turned off by 10 o'clock. That's our limit there. If they're on longer than that, I didn't know it, I was sleepy. But I think it would be really hard to give up that tennis court. If people from down in the parks would come up and play, some came from Bayfield, lots of them came from Ashland and played over there. But they don't want to come anymore because it's not playable. You can't play on it anymore. Although the pickle people, they play and they have a great time. So I would really like to see that tennis court left and fixed up the way it used to be. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Excuse me, ma'am. Do you mind writing your name on the, I don't remember if you did.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
I thought I did it already. I think it was.
Thank you, Daryl. Was anyone else here who would like to speak? Anyone online who would like to speak? Seeing none, we will move on. Thank you everyone very much for your comments. It's really nice to see public engagement. I love seeing a full room. Thank you for being here. Okay, our next item is mayoral announcements, proclamations, appointments. And I have to start out by saying, hooray, the referendum passed. Yes. This is really, it's been a long time in the making, the challenges and problems that we've had. And one of the items that we're going to talk about here is Dan Clark's service to our city as an EMT. And the issue has been one that I've known about for many years, even before becoming mayor. And I have been involved in many efforts to try to recruit EMTs, our volunteer paid on call EMTs, and for many reasons, we're at the point we are, and it was extremely critical that this happened so that we can hopefully move forward with a funded service that will work better for our city. So hooray, hooray.
What was the votes on that? I didn't see that.
534 to 99.
Yeah,
Yeah.
534 to
Our
99.
community is
Very much in support of it. Now we just have to find 2 full-time EMTs.
Right.
Next item. Another thing I'd like to mention, Joe Roshek, who many of you may know, he's with the North Coast Cycling Association, and community-minded individual, sent some information to me just the other day on something that he's been noticing, No Mow May. No Mow May, for those of you who may not know, is about not mowing your lawns in the month of May to try to help things that we normally consider weeds and not wanting in our lawns, but usually to flower so that bees and other pollinators can utilize those flowers before the other flowers and things have a chance to bud. I don't know a lot about this, but he did share some information about it. It's not anything that's on our agenda for action, but I just wanted to put this out there. If there are people who are interested in this concept, even if it's as a volunteer, there's different cities that do it in different ways. If you're interested in having any discussion on this, please get a hold of Joe. And I have his phone number and email address. I'll just give that to Scott maybe to have here at City Hall. So if people call and they're interested in that topic, maybe I'll give it to Jerry too. And we could have a discussion about if that's something that our community would like to do. I do have to say that the city itself probably would not participate because we have parks that we need to take care of and maintain. And we probably would continue to mow most of our, city parks but that's a discussion that we can have in the future. And maybe there would be some places where we will. Well, that's the other thing. So this far north, we're not mowing in May really anyway. So for us, maybe it wouldn't be no mow May. It might be no mow June. So anyway, if anyone is interested in that topic, please get a hold of Joe Groshek or call City Hall to get his contact information. And he will help lead that discussion. And I also will recommend that Joe gets in touch with the Ecology Club up at school, because that might be something that they would be interested in.
And we do have an ordinance for
We
like
do.
mowing too, you can only let your grass grow so high.
Correct.
And so there should be some kind of cautionary tale. I'm sure like if you didn't mow for a while, we didn't get to that, but I think we should note, I did have a discussion with somebody, and I did mention that we do have an ordinance. I don't know exactly what it says, I didn't look it up.
And depending on what is discussed and what's brought forward, the council could potentially ask our weed commissioner to not enforce that ordinance for a period of time, if that's something that we want to get to.
I just want to
So,
finish the ordinance.
They also claim too that bumblebees, when there's another pollinator, they either nest in the ground or they're covered up with leaves. And that's the leaves that are on the ground, not too right.
Well, those can always be there.
so anyway, lots of details, I'm sure, that could be discussed with that topic, but something to think about as an eco-municipality, maybe something we want to think about, or not. But I did tell him that I would mention that. Also, we are going to have, I don't have any appointments to make today, but we will have some openings on a couple of committees as I'm talking with people about whether they'd like to stay on the committees that they're currently serving on. There are going to be a couple of openings. One, I believe, will be on Harbor Commission. Another will be on the Library Board. So if you know of anyone who would want to serve on those types of committees, civic-minded people that are here with us tonight, if you know of anyone, please spread the word. Anyone who's listening, please, I ask the same. And I do want to, with that, thank everyone who has served on the committees and given their time, because it is really important to have all sorts of perspectives when we're discussing the things that get discussed at all of our different committees and boards. So thank you to everyone who has served on those. Speaking of service, is this a public comment? Do I get to open the floor during mayoral announcements and proclamations? Is that my own decision?
Talk to you during your announcement.
I know, everybody's just chiming in tonight. Jeremy, go ahead.
The Parks Committee?
Yes, I do not have an appointment to make it. I'm just gonna wait and do all the appointments at the next month.
Thanks.
Absolutely. We do not have that on our agenda. But again, speaking of service, I would like to recognize someone who has served our community for a really long time. And I want to say, the only part that I know for sure, it's been about 24 years just as director of our ambulance service. And that is Dan Clark. And Dan, if you would come forward, I have something that I would like to present to you. But first, I have to go on a little bit and talk about what an amazing person this is standing here with us tonight. Dan is the most dedicated volunteer that I know, period. And I've known Dan for a long time. And I know a lot of people who volunteer in a lot of organizations. But Dan's commitment to the organizations that he has volunteered for cannot be surpassed. And we are incredibly lucky to have Dan, because he is still a volunteer EMT, paid on call, with our ambulance service, even though he's not the director any longer. Dan stepped down as director last year. So I wish I had $1 million. There's a song about that. To give you, because your service has just been so amazing and consistent, and we truly don't have the kind of volunteerism any longer coming into our committees and organizations, that is exemplified by the service that Dan has given to our city. So again, I cannot thank you enough for your service, and I do have something that I'd like to give you. This, the certificate. And I realized that there was a little spot there right.
Can I make a request?
Yeah, a bit different background.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
not stand by that.
Your career is going down the toilet, man.
I've heard that before.
Oh, wait, I have no glasses on. They're not real
All right. Thank you.
Oh, nice. Can everyone go look at that?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Just the ones.
That are friends with?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, so you posted a picture from like 35 years ago as an EMT on his Facebook page, so if anyone's friends with Dan on Facebook, go check it out. Oh, and I forgot the most important part.
$1 million?
The part where I thank Carol for being there, supporting Dan in all of his service. I know of one instance for sure where Dan got called away from his breakfast, where he sat down with Carol to enjoy breakfast at the timeout. And as soon as he did, his pager went off and he had to go. And I'm guessing that's not the only time that happened. So thank you, both of you, for the many years of service.
Thank you. Yeah, or third, yes. Thank you.
Absolutely. Have a great night. Okay, our next item is presentation of the 2021 library report. Daryl Pendergrass. Here's Daryl.
Try not to break. I'm Daryl Pendergrass, Director of the Washburn Public Library, and we do an annual report for the library every year, and there's the one we file with the DPI, and that's this one here with all the numbers, and what that does is it breaks down where our money was spent on what kinds of things and our revenue sources, and says who are your board members and phone numbers and how many programs, what hours you're open, yada yada. What does that mean? I sent you the summary. What it means to me is it gives me and us a chance to know what our budget or how we need to budget early. I mean, it allows us early on to know. And so because there's a funding formula, and the funding formula works like this. How much did you spend? We spent roughly $181,000 on our entire budget. We divided by your total checkouts, which is 19,900. You come up with a cost per checkout, which is $9.08 per checkout. And that's only the physical items. The books that go out the door, the DVDs that go out the door. And then what you do is you multiply that by the number of reimbursable checkouts, and that's the county checkouts. And the reimbursable checkouts are the people that come from Cornucopia, Herbster, Port Wing, people who don't pay a library tax up front. So people from Washburn aren't reimbursable, people from Cornucopia. And then you multiply that out and then you come up with a number. And our number for next year is $76,000 at 100% reimbursement. The county only has to give us 70% of that, which will be roughly $53,000. The good news is that's $3,000 more than they had to give me this year. So it's a good thing. There's a fine line whenever you're working the library budget. You don't want to ever be going down, and you just only want to be going slightly up so that you keep getting a little more. So financially, the budget's if you look on the back of the summary page, the best case scenario, if the city gave us exactly what they gave us this year, and the county was to give us 100%, we'd be sitting really good. But they're not likely to. So the best case budget, or my best guess budget, is 185,650, which is slightly up. So that's good. The checkouts, as you can imagine, in 2020 plummeted to 15,700. But considering we weren't open, the doors weren't open, that's not too bad. And so now we're open again. It went up in 2021 to 19,900. It should keep going up. I can tell you that the library is getting busier. People are using the rooms. People are coming in. What we don't have right now is the after-school kids, and I believe this is why, because there was the uncertainty at the beginning of the school year. Are they going to be open? Are they going to close? And so parents made their arrangements for their children. And you're not going to like say, no, we don't, we're going to start going to the library, and then all of a sudden a month later we're closed because of COVID. I'm hoping that next year we'll be, everybody will be more comfortable. We're going to be there for you. We'll certainly advertise and let people know we're going to be there for you, and those people will come back. An interesting thing is that on the first page, the wireless at the internet is going on 24 hours a day. In 2020, we had 6,300 times that somebody tapped into the Wi-Fi. This year, with smart thinking from Tony and efforts of Jerry to get the picnic tables down to the library, we had 13,000 something Wi-Fi check-ins, and those. And just visually, those are people that are coming up from the parks. They're a lot of people I don't know, and it's on 24 hours a day. So like 9 o'clock, people, 10 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock.
So you can hook up to it from outside of the building?
Absolutely, and we put a booster on it, so you don't have to be right up next to. You don't have to be right up next to the building.
You could be in your car even,
in your car. And I tell the foreign exchange students, whenever they always bring them up from the school, I tell them early on, I'm like, because their parents, when it's midnight here, their parents and stuff are awake in their countries. I'm like, come on down here, you can tap into the Wi-Fi. So we're the library's getting it together. We're doing more as this COVID thing passes by. We got the tuck point work done. The good news is we had a tuck point expert, so to speak, come, and he came up with this is how much you're going to need. And we raised a little more than that, and the bid came in significantly less, and the work got done. So we have a pool of money, which we're going to. The next thing you're going to do is talk about the no bid on the elevator. So we're going to replace the elevator, and we're going to get one with an automatic door. Whenever you think about the history of that library, from 1905 to roughly 1998, if you were in a wheelchair or you had a disability, you couldn't use that library at all because it either went downstairs or upstairs. Through time, we put on automatic doors, the wheelchair ramp, the wheelchair handicap parking. Now we just need to get automatic doors on those elevators. And right now, if you're in a wheelchair, somebody can get you in, but once those doors are done, you can come in on your own. And I can't wait, because that really makes me happy whenever I see people using the library that problem getting in, can push that button and come on in. We replaced boilers, we did some roof repairs. I thought the tuck point people were the hardest working people I'd ever seen until I saw the roof people come in January. Those are the hardest working people I've ever seen in my life. We replaced a lot of our computers. We're looking to sheetrock the ceiling, and then replace carpeting. And during my time there, we've done a lot of building things. And so the next director that follows me won't have all those things to do. Anyways, this is your time to, if you have any questions for me, or if you have anything you want to tell me. I can't fix things that I don't know about. So if you hear things, I'm not the kind of guy who gets all mad. I mean, if somebody has an issue or something that you need me to do at the library, let me know. And if I can do it, we will. If I can't, we'll figure out why and maybe get around that.
Do you have an official after-school program? It's not official, is it?
No,
No.
no.
I just want to make sure.
What we
I
did,
know people go, trust me, I know.
Right,
what
what
happens
we-
there, but I didn't think it was official.
right, what we did was, we have 2 rooms in the basement that are, because of the smallness of the library, they're kind of designated for after-school use. And the kids go down there and we watch them. We do have cameras, but there's no sound, so I'm not eavesdropping on them, but I'm watching them, because sometimes they climb on the tables and stuff. But anyways, but it's really, the rooms and the community really gets along. Like sometimes every room is used, the kitchen area, and everybody just kind of makes it work. And so if the kids are in one room and Tamba's meeting or Asheville Bay, they just kind of figure it out.
It's amazing what you do on the budget that you have to work with.
Well, if I could just toot my own horn for 1 second, when I came here in 2005, the budget was $161,000. It was $181,500 last year. So we haven't got, we try to be, we like to think we're not gouging anybody. We're doing our best.
And it's an amazing place.
Well, hopefully it'll be an amazing place for another 100 years. And
Laura, did you have something?
I did. I felt like remiss for not mentioning the retirement of a very important.
Yep, Deb Terry was there for roughly 28 years. Been there so long she couldn't remember how long, so that's long. I think her son, I can remember her son was 10 years old. I think he's 35 now. He and I were 10 years old. He was 10, I was older than 10. We were at the first book across the bay throwing a football around at the finish line. So she's been there a while.
I have a quick Deb story. So speaking of after-school programs, we have some amazing people in the community that sometimes do art programs and things like that for kids. And my kids would go to that occasionally. And my son Charlie was there one day when they made like
a lantern,
decoupage lantern, where they have a balloon and then they paste things around and then they pop the balloon and then you're left with this paper lantern. Cool little thing. I was there to pick him up and he brought his lantern up and went up to Deb and said, "I made this for you." And she kind of looked at me like, "Sorry." But Deb, took the lantern graciously and kept it. And finally, when my son graduated from high school, she gave it back to me. So I have it here in my office. The fact that my child wanted to give her the lamp that he made is a testament to her, graciousness. And she was so good with kids and so good with everyone. And it is our loss for sure, but time for her to move on to the next stage. And we thank her for her service. We did a little celebration at the library for that.
Any more questions? Before I go, I just want to say that, express my appreciation to Scott, Tony, Jerry, Tammy, everyone in City Hall, City Council. Thank you. It does take a team to run the library, and everyone's on the team. I just happen to be at the top of the pecking order, so to speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carol. All right.
I'm gonna put a string on it tomorrow.
Our next item is discussion and action on library board request to no bid for library lift replacement. That is tab 2 in your packet.
Madam Mayor, I move approval of this request.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion by Laura and a second by Karen to approve the request to accept a no bid cost for to replace the library lift. And this is okay to do when it's a similar piece of equipment by the same company. Does anyone have any questions?
We can eliminate to 45,000.
To allow the expenditure, is the motion to allow up to 45,000 for the replacement? Is that, that was the amount in the memo,
Right.
and that's an okay amount, Daryl, you think?
Yeah, we have that, we've raised that much money, it's in the, in an account, and it's the same company that put in the last one, so they know all the workings. It'll be very similar, except it'll be a little quicker and automatic doors.
And you think 45,000 is sufficient?
Your request is for
Yeah.
Replacement, yeah.
I told them I was only buying one elevator in my lifetime, I'm spending a lot of money on it, it better work, so they assured me that it was.
So yes, up to 45,000 is the motion?
Correct.
Okay. Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. You'll get to see that day soon.
Hopefully it's not me needing it.
You never know. All right, very good. Our next item is discussion and action on acceptance of bid and approval of contract for Washburn Ironworks Sewer Relocation Project. Tab 3 in your packet. So this gets a little complicated in that the cost, we had added into this project a relocation of a water line to accommodate our ball fields and that area over there in the ice rink. And the cost of that was actually greater than we thought at the time. And so now in looking at this, Scott has outlined in detail a number of options. In looking at this, I had a few questions, and one of them was how much is in the Parks Fund? You know, if we're looking at ARPA dollars versus the Parks Fund and different combinations of paying for this. And the answer to that is currently around $266,000. Having said that, there are some other projects that some money has been allotted for, including the concession stand that was mentioned here, the tennis courts, and then potentially some other projects as well, and things that have already been committed. So we've already committed, including the amount of $20,000 that was in there for the tennis courts when we approved the budget for those capital items. That was a $20,000 amount. So we have committed a little over half of that amount already for various projects. So having said that, and then I also asked about ARPA dollars and if there are restrictions on what we can spend that on. And apparently a decision was made recently that with this low amount of ARPA dollars that we received, we can spend it on pretty much whatever we want. So it's just a matter of, do we want to swallow that extra cost and get the benefit of having that water line and figure out which one of these ways we would want to pay for that? or not. That's part one. And then part two is if we do want to, which combination do we want to do? And so I don't know if anyone has a motion they want to make to get us started with a further detailed conversation. Mary?
Okay, and then I would make a motion to, avoid the water looping and use number 4, ARPA funds for the project, leaving park outlay funds, for the parks.
I'm not sure if I understand that. So you're saying,
Cut the looping for the extra money, right?
so I think if we do that, that's its own thing. We
Oh,
either-
the one that, instead of the fire hydrant, right?
So the water looping, we either reject the bids and rebid without that water loop portion,
Right.
or bid and decide how we're gonna pay for it.
Okay, I thought one of them here was to ask them to redo the bid with that out of it?
Oh, right,
That's number
and
one.
then that's it.
And then that's it.
Yeah.
So you're voting to reject the bid and rebid without that water loop?
No, I don't want to rebid though, I would agree with
Oh,
Scott. so-
number 2, negotiate to remove the water loop portion. Okay,
Right, but then I don't want to use park funds for any of the extras, I want to use ARPA funds, so that it's twofold, right? Do I have that right?
There would be no extras if we negotiate the water looping.
Oh, got it, okay, so it's that.
so then there'd be no,
Okay.
yeah.
If you want the line,
Then
gotta
we
keep
have to
the number
do number 4.
Yes.
Okay. That's where I'm going. Except I have a question on the water looping. It said, new services to 2 residences. It should be 3, unless you're taking me out.
It could be 3.
Okay.
Are
It
any-
is 3, the 2 bungalows. It would be Leo's, it would be the Reeds, and it would be me.
Our engineer is online if he happens to know that off the top of his head.
Yes, if there's 3 people serviced off that backside, we would certainly reconnect all 3. We're not gonna
So that.
say that you have to go back to bottled water or anything.
Yeah. Oh, so that would increase the price.
No, well, the cost of the service is $500.
Yeah, it's minimal when you're already putting the line.
Got it.
You're there.
Also.
So just to clarify,
Yes,
your motion,
is to keep,
keep the water loop,
correct?
okay,
And I would go for covering the cost by number 4,
with the ARPA dollars.
allocating the ARPA dollars and not use any park.
Okay,
outlay funds.
so there's a motion
And I second.
and a second. Okay, motion by Mary, second by Jen to cover to keep the water loop and cover the cost with ARPA dollars. Are there any questions? Karen?
Question, and in option 4, then the asphalt would in fact be accomplished?
That's a good question.
Well,
It says with the needed asphalt patch, so.
But then it doesn't talk about, does that include is that a patch only, or is that what would be needed to have a basketball court down there?
So the answer to that question is that is only the patch. If we want to look at that further, and that patch won't happen right away, so there's a little time on that. But if we want to look further into redoing that entire area, to potentially have a basketball court, that would be extra. But
And that could be something maybe we do at Parks Fund, right? You know, that seems more appropriate.
Although the water loop is to service the park area. Karen?
Just to follow up, so then in option 3, the estimated $6,500 to repair the asphalt in the ice rink, is that what's considered the patch?
Correct.
So theoretically, we wouldn't spend the money on the patch if we're going to potentially redo the basketball court and just pay for that out of park funds.
You wouldn't need the patch.
Then you wouldn't need the patch.
It would be a larger area, yes.
We don't have to decide that now.
Right.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So the ice rink gets fixed or not in this option?
It would be fixed one way or the other.
One way or the other.
The question
Yeah.
will be, it will either be patched or we will make a later decision
Okay.
to make
And
further
that's-
improvements.
Yeah.
More than that.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
absolutely. Any other questions?
I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
In terms of the ARPA dollars, I know this is using the chunk of them,
A big chunk.
all of it. Is that, I guess, I don't know, is there something else that the administration is thinking that they want to hang on to that for? Are we like, what are we giving up? Because we're never not giving up something, so
Well,
I'm just wondering. what we were
It's a
giving
good
up.
question. Do you want me to talk about that?
Windows, whatever it is, I don't know. Sorry, I just.
No, it's a good question. It's a good question.
Thank you.
That's a complicated.
A good
I'll take
question,
this
but-
apart. I mean, there are a million things that the city can do. Whether it be, windows at City Hall, which we've only discussed for the past dozen years. Or there's improvements in the other parks. We talked about potentially improving the restroom at Memorial Park to make that ADA accessible. There are countless utility projects that could be done, but we're gonna be left with a very small dollar amount to get anything else done. So this is kind of as long as we're digging in the area, this is an opportunity to kind of fix this area as long as we're already working there, without doing another project. I mean, this is not a project that would hurt us as far as expenditure restraint. I mean, I will bring forward, another thought that I had was, okay, well, now that the referendum passed, if we wanted to get a jump start on EMT solicitation and potentially hire somebody this year, we could use those dollars this year for that. However, the drawback of doing that is we then lose money next year because we have the expenditure restraint issue. So there's a million different scenarios, but it really boils down to if this is something that will help improve that area and make that area better for the future, better for the community, it's certainly a legitimate expense.
Thank you. And I guess for me, the reason why I'm asking is because we're having things like this come up that we're not like being proactive about, right? So, I could say like the tennis courts, it's like, oh, we got a tennis court, we have this opportunity. Oh, we have RV park, we have this opportunity. And all these things are money and there's trade-offs. And I guess I like to see us being a little bit more planned with some of our capital investments like this versus how we're doing it right now.
Right.
Just, that's my food for thought right now.
And I don't have the list in front of me, but I had asked Scott for that list of the things that we wanted to do, but we couldn't do because we didn't have enough money in our capital budget. So speaking of things like the windows of the City Hall. So,
Which is a planned expenditure.
correct.
You
So,
know,
so the only reason I have those ARPA dollars, because we can't fix the windows in City Hall. We do have some money there to spend towards something like parks. So does it make more sense to kind of divvy it up a little so that there's still a little flexibility there with those ARPA dollars to use something for one of our planned expenses?
And there's always gonna be things that come up, I just,
Right.
yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, and that's why I asked.
All good questions. Any other questions or comments or discussion on the motion to keep the loop, the water loop, and pay for that with our remaining ARPA dollars. Scott? Oh, sure. Kayla, do you care what we do?
You just here. I just want to see us approve something.
Would you mind giving a sort of quick note summary on the benefits of the water loop, what we'd be giving up if we didn't add this in?
Do you want to do that?
I can do that. So the purpose of the water loop, one of the advantages is that line is currently a dead end line. So whenever we have a dead end line, it's never good in your water system. That can lead to stagnant water and requires us to flush that area more often. So by looping the system, we eliminate that issue and just have a little bit of fresher water in that area. The other thing that it does is we've had, one of the improvements here is we have an issue whenever we flood the ice rink. It requires opening a hydrant in order to do that. And that's one, not a safe thing to do. It's a potential risk as well to the water supply whenever we do those sorts of things. So this adds an appropriate device there that they can flood that rink easier in a safe manner without opening the hydrant, and it's in a better location.
And that can potentially break a water line, right, when we do things like that, when we open it.
Right, that's one of the issues, kind of like we've experienced over this past summer, is if we're opening a hydrant each time, and if it's not done properly, that can lead to basically it's called a water hammer and break the line. So this also adds some water services along the ball field area, so the ball fields can be irrigated without running a hose all the way. I don't know how many hundreds of feet of hose that requires currently if they need to do that. So it adds those in there, and then we're making improvements to the 3 water services of the 3 properties that are served by that line as well. So, and I think that's it, unless Mike has anything else to add.
Or Jerry?
Yep, you hit the high points there, and as you mentioned, the water service impact. Currently, those 3 homes are serviced off a small diameter water service and connected together, which by DNR code and PSC rules isn't up to code. And so by putting this water line in there and tapping individual residents off the water line, they now have their own individual service versus a combined small diameter service.
Thanks, Mike. And then Jen?
I just have a question, because all of a sudden this time of year, I'm thinking a lot about drainage and stormwater. And I don't understand how it works everywhere. Like, I see the stormwater runoff go into places. I know some places have good stormwater vent things that go wherever they go. Some places don't. That area is super wet, right, over there.
Mm-hmm.
So when we do these kind of improvements where we're opening things up, is that an opportunity for us to do some kind of drainage and stormwater removal too, that we're not doing at the same time? I mean, that's my question.
Jen, that wasn't a planned expense.
Saying, like,
But a good idea.
I'm walking on
Good
Browntown,
question.
looking at all this stuff with the tennis courts and everything, and I'm just like, right, it's an issue. Right, it's the worst place.
It wasn't a planned expense. We didn't put stormwater improvements in the proposed project. So I will tell you that the Ironworks does have to do a stormwater retention detention plan for the facility, and that's something that they're working on for that property. But we do not make specific stormwater improvements as part of this project.
Okay, and then I don't want to add anything, it's probably too late, but I think in the future, we just like those baseball fields, they're wet, they're muddy all the time, right? And I know between the Forest Service and the Ironworks building, we've got some major water running through that. I mean, it's an issue. I mean, and it all goes right down where we have our business park. You know, we've got, I think in the future, something we should always think about. And it's probably too late to think about it here, so I'm just,
And Mary, go ahead.
But I would say what improvements have been made by the city though, is all the storm drainage that used to be down there in years just got overgrown and filled in with silt. And so over the last year and a half or so, I know, they've done a great job, but just past me even, they opened it all up and nice and deep, and it's going now where it's supposed to go. And what used to be on the east side now is underground, cuts over and gets gathered there and sent, and then below the ball carts, all got dug again, silt, brush, you know,
right.
all of that's been taken care of, to that side of this project area, so.
Yeah.
Mike, did you have something else there?
I was just going to add that since they will be excavating this and it'll all be dug up, it will give us the opportunity to grade a swale that will drain better than it currently is with being overgrown and full of silt and sediment. So we can correct the grades as we put it back and restore it.
And then with that little bit of money we save by not doing the patch, potentially, we can.
Yeah, it's just something to think about, yeah.
With the project that you approved, and this budget does include a contingency, so if there is something that, you know, does come up and it's within the project budget for that contingency, that's something that you can look at.
Yeah. I'm just,
Good
there's a
point.
lot of water
Yeah,
everywhere right now,
everywhere.
and I just feel like.
That's what we get for living in a built-in ravine.
Totally, and a lot of the stuff that we have is at the bottom of the hill, so it's just, you know, I'm just thinking climate change, I'm thinking more moisture, I'm thinking a lot of different things that we just have to slowly start thinking about.
And plan for.
Yep.
Very good questions. Anything else?
Yeah, I guess I'm, it sounds convincing that the water would be beneficial in many ways, and I am glad that we're talking about taking advantage of this project
Can you just grab your
to
microphone?
make more improvements. But I think we should still talk a little bit about where the money comes from, because, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome.
I would normally be in favor of holding on to some of the parks money for the parks alone, but as we're talking about it, it sounds like it really does benefit our parks in many ways. It creates opportunities and a little bit, an opportunity for it to be easier for volunteers to help out with things like flooding the rinks or concessions towards funds, whatever. But it is hard to choose where money comes from. It would be nice to know that if we're using parks money for that, what the ARP money could be used for.
Do you have that list handy or in your mind?
I know you've already said that, I mean, it's vague, but if there's some things that would really benefit.
We had how much of unfunded capital requests? Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
There's the list.
And that really is, the list of things that we would want to plan for, that are on the unfunded request, but simply could not find the money to do it. So just to Jen's earlier points, there is that list of, you know, long-term plan issues and projects that need to be done. It's just that we never can get to them, like the windows at the city hall, which is on top of my list of what we need to do.
So the total of unfunded items is $298,000. But breaking that down, $156,000 of that is for a building expansion at the ambulance hall, $5,000 for blacktop replacement, tied in with the fire department request and the ambulance hall combined 4,000 in cot and stretcher upgrades. That's all ambulance. City Hall, 60,000 for the windows, 50,000 to codify all of our codes into an electronic format. Fire department, 13,000 to pave an area behind the fire hall to prevent washouts, so that's that combined project. Parks, 10,000 for the concession stand, a prefabricated concession stand. And the project at Memorial Park for erosion control is, we don't even have a number for that. It's gonna be huge, and that's gonna have to be some other kind of funding, probably.
For the short line?
So those were just budget requests. That doesn't include all of our requests. And we have utility requests, which you're not gonna have in this budget. You're gonna have, we had a whole separate listing of things that we intended to do at the parks. And then with the change last month with the dollars being able to be more flexible in some ways, it opens up more doors as well. So it can get rather complex. This project was already in the works, has been discussed for years. So we were already using ARPA dollars for the sewer line portion of it. So it's a matter of how deep you want to go.
And in which pot?
Right. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else with comments or questions?
The motion was for, number four.
Number 4.
It's been a while since we talked about it.
Do we need to send this to the Parks Committee if this motion failed and we wanted to go with number 3
Or number 5?
or number 5? Because I don't know what the parks can afford and what they have plans.
And that's where I asked that, and we have $266,000 in the Parks Fund, and about, just over half of that is committed. So there is some, and we get between 30 and 40,000 annually into that budget. So there's a little bit of room there, but not a ton.
And I would say the Parks Committee doesn't often we have not been asked to make recommendations or anything on budgetary.
No, that would just be a council decision.
Yeah. We haven't looked at the designated funds and and made recommendations and stuff like that. We really haven't dug into that, Tony.
That's correct. It's an advisory committee.
I mean, if the council wanted us to come up with a proposal and work with whatever to come up with a planning for the Parks Fund, that would be a task that the Parks Committee could take on at some point, but we have not gone there.
Any other questions, Tom?
I think we should stick with number 4 because the price of fuel right now, I don't know how full these parks could be this summer. These parks could be hurt in the summer. Go option 4, like they said, don't change nothing.
Anyone else? Any other discussion, questions, comments? So the motion right now is to go with option number 4, keeping the loop and covering it with ARPA dollars. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okey-dokey.
Then move to amend the contract with theirs for the water design as requested.
Okay. Motion by Carl on the next item to amend the agreement.
Second.
Second by Karen. This is still tab 3?
Yeah.
Yes.
On the bottom of it.
Any other questions or any questions at all on that motion? Comments, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Excellent. Next item, discussion and action on acceptance of bid for road gravel. This is tab 4. And
Move to accept the bid of $66,465 from South Shore Sand and Gravel, Iron River.
Second.
we have a motion by Carl, second by Laura. Any questions, comments? Tom?
Jerry, is that gonna be straight up gravel or is it gonna be packing gravel?
It's actually, we put in the specs that it had to come from a hard crushed quarry. So we're actually getting, and they provided us with a SIP, so it's natural. I mean, it's coming out of a rock quarry where, it's gonna be packing. We've got, talked to a couple people that have used it, and same stuff that comes out for Ashland and stuff, and they like it, so.
Well, I was just curious, some of these alleys are real soft, some of them have lakes in them yet.
Yeah.
And packing gravel just, that won't,
Well, and the stuff we did last year, we were just touching up because we didn't have the amount of gravel we needed to actually put a good base back down. So the plan is when we redo these alleyways this year, they're gonna get roughly a minimum of 6 inches of stone placed back on top of them as we grade through them, so. And then repair some of the drainage issues. There's a couple of stormwater. We just purchased a bunch of equipment through stormwater to help start figuring out some of these stormwater issues and to help with drainage, getting things set up for drainage. So it should help us out immensely figuring things out in the city.
well, there's grates running in the culverts that are like cut off and blocked off on streets.
You mean like just stuff that's stuck in there from?
No, when they redid 4th Street over there, there's a culvert that used to run down between my property and the next property, and it went down. They cut it off at 4th Street, so now the one neighbor, all that water, snow is going in there, and it just runs all over the place. The neighbor next to me had water in their basement last year, so they had it fixed. They had all the windows replaced, and they did some ceiling, but I mean, everything, last year, there was 3 inches of water down the bottom part of my yard, right across from that culvert.
A lot of water. Any other questions on the gravel? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item. Now, this is a little different. This is a reconsideration of terrace type selection for the Bayfield Street project. And so if someone were to make a motion, the first motion would be to reconsider this item. And then if we do reconsider it, then we would have another motion.
I'll make the motion to reconsider this item.
Second.
Motion by Tom, second by Karen to reconsider this item. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So, I think we sort of rushed through this because we added something in that we really hadn't talked through there with the stamping. And so we have the color, the stamping, or no color are kind of the options if we want to stick with the concrete terrace. Well, or you can go back to even no color, because the other part of the discussion is when there are repairs that need to be made, can you match in the color? And how bad does that look if you can't? So we are going to reconsider. Does anyone have a motion on what they would like to do instead?
I do. I say, go to, excuse me,
no stamping, and use the same color as the sidewalk on those terraces.
So motion by Tom to go with no color concrete.
Because it's gonna be easier to fix, the salt's gonna tear it up.
Is there a second to that motion?
A second.
Second by Carl. Any questions? Comments or discussion? Hold on, Jen first.
I got 'em.
Or are you thinking?
No, I don't know. I mean, I keep trying to look up different things for like having, again, drainage, you know, having these.
Impervious or?
Impervious, like, I mean, I
It
did
adds
look them up, but you said that they probably would, like, I mean, it's all about what the highway department's gonna work with. So my question again is, really, are these our only options? They're only options?
These are our only realistic options
Is that
from a
realistic?
maintenance perspective, yes. We have discussed this several months at our working committee with the DOT. And we've discussed with our engineer other potential options, but anything that's going to hold up and actually make a difference as far as drainage, because below this is going to be packed gravel
anyway.
and so forth anyway, so.
I got an engineer up there. I can see him. There's no other options, hey? All right, concrete it is. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
It's gonna look nice.
It's not gonna look nice.
It'll look clean and consistent.
Annual chalk art festival.
Better give me some planters is all I gotta say.
Milwaukee North.
Good planters.
Milwaukee
Break it
North.
down right now.
So the only thing I guess I would add is that, but, you know, the terraces are gonna have to be repaired eventually anyway.
You mean the new ones eventually?
Yeah, and, you know, coloring one, matching the color, you may not get it exact, but it's still gonna look nice, and if it's stamped, it will look even better. And as far as matching it, the city can certainly purchase a set of stamps that they are going to use and keep them in the garage and stamp. Whoever is responsible for repair in the future will just use that stamp to maintain the look.
Question for Mike on this. We did have the picture in there about the stamped colored concrete that didn't wear well, and I don't know the exact situation. Oh,
Well, Mike is not aware of that.
oh. Well, I guess my question in general for Mike is, in your experience with stamped concrete, does it wear less well than non-stamped concrete? And does color come
It
into
does.
play?
There is a tremendous amount of maintenance that is required in order to preserve the quality of the concrete and the color. There's annual sealing that needs to be done with clear sealers to preserve that. The biggest thing that happens when using stamped and colored concrete is, as it's being colored and stamped, they lose the air content in the concrete. And when they lose that air content, over time, the salt has a greater tendency to adversely affect that concrete. And as you've seen in many areas, concrete can turn to gravel. You can pick up handfuls of gravel. And that is always the concern there. And that is why so many communities have gone to a fired brick in that instance instead of a stamped and colored concrete. But now you're adding more cost again. But the durability and the longevity is greater.
How about compared to the non-colored concrete? Does that?
The white concrete ends up, because it's poured all at the same time with the sidewalk, it performs the same as the sidewalk.
Okay. Laura?
I imagine this could make it complicated, but, you know, I still like to throw ideas out there. Is it feasible to set parameters that if it was going to be anything other than grass or this concrete, could individual property owners along the highway choose to put in the fired brick if they felt like this was something they would enjoy in terms of business or the investment they'd be willing to make on their own?
I would recommend against a non-uniform, because the city is going to be responsible at the end for the maintenance of this, and if you would have a hodgepodge, this property is gonna have this, and this property, we would have a maintenance nightmare with such a situation.
Any other questions or comments or discussion on the motion, which is to go with a non-colored concrete?
Do we have an estimate of how much the brick would cost?
No, I don't think we do. No.
You have an educated guess?
I'm just looking.
It was probably more than double of what you're considering now.
So more than double of the non-colored concrete?
Because you're what, 70,000 for the non-colored?
And
So
then-
your brick, you're probably in the 150,000 range?
Well, you know, when you're trying to do things on a budget, you want to do it as well as you can and get the benefit of the consistent, low maintenance, clean look without committing a huge amount of money over.
So if we're just doing plain concrete, we're saving how much? I mean, we're at 17 with the additional for the stamping and
Was it like 30 for the,
70,000, so.
for the color?
Keep in mind, we're only on the first phase of the project.
Right. Yep. I get it.
So we haven't calculated the second phase, but for simplicity's sake.
But at the last meeting, we approved this extra 70-some thousand for the colored concrete.
On this last page, with the original estimates, you might understand where you're calling subtotal for white sidewalk, that's actually talking about the terrace.
Subtotal for white sidewalk, yeah.
Yeah.
Of that, the 51.
So where we're talking about going from 27,000 to 51,000 plus. For going 2 more blocks. So bringing in the expense and the more temperamental stamped and colored concrete. It seems like a good opportunity to look at that cost and bring it back to 6 again, where we've already decided to stop the light.
Okay, we do not have a motion to change the placement of it, we're just looking at the
makeup of it at this point.
And its original estimate for colored sidewalk, 60,000 is now 77. Yeah.
And that, does the 77 include the stamping?
No. Wasn't that more? Stamping was another 17, wasn't it? 17.3.
17.3, 17.4 for the staff.
Yeah, on the last page, it was the 80,000, 79,965 minus the 96 of what it would have been with color. So that's the extra that we paid, right? That we approved. I'm looking on the very last page of the packet.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we didn't, it wasn't an additional 70,000 that we did for stamping.
No, 17.
17, thank you.
For stamping, but the colored concrete was additional
9,300.
9,300. So without doing the coloring and the stamping, we're at roughly $28,000. Or 27 even. Okay.
Just remember how much we're spending on the decorative lighting.
Well, and that's why I asked about and that's why I asked about the fired bricks. I mean, I'm again, as I've stated a couple times, I think I'm just looking to improve the aesthetics of our downtown, because we're doing great things underground. When we get done, everybody's gonna go be like, oh, we just went through 2 years of that to see this. And so I'm just looking where we can.
And I think I can't agree with you more on that. I mean, this is our last opportunity in our lifetimes to get this right. And I know things are expensive, especially now. But when we're gonna spend this much money, we're gonna end up basically with the same thing that we have, other than some fancy light poles. I think people are gonna want more. And I know that, we're limited to our budget, but I think if we're not gonna spend the $27,000 on stamped concrete and such, we should probably think about other ways that we can use that $27,000 to beautify the area in which we're doing this in some way.
Yeah. I agree.
Permanent potted plants or something.
Mary? I was gonna say, I agree with you. I just know that if we're being blamed for not doing maintenance now, I look at the long-term maintenance for the future, and if we're not doing it now, we may stay on top of it, but even the curb and gutter stuff that we used to maintain from the last big project we did, has slowed down because we're running out of money for the sealants and those sorts of projects that happen. And I think having not gone through an underground project like this before, I can't even tell you the innumerable other problems that will show themselves for the future. And it's sometimes mind-boggling and it's beyond scary. So in that respect, what they don't see, they don't appreciate until it backs up, but having been through it, it's shocking what's ahead.
And I agree. I don't think we should do something that's gonna require maintenance. And so
I agree.
the stamping and the annual sealing, fine. But if there's another option that will give us something, and I guess you say double, I mean, I'd like to see some prices, and maybe okay, so when do we have to make this decision? Tonight?
Well,
maybe
that's what we told the DOT, we would tell them tomorrow what is decided tonight. I don't know, how critical this decision is to
If we have a motion on the table, and I'm fine with that, but I'm just saying, I agree with Dave. I mean, if we're gonna save 30 grand, let's talk about, and let's really think about what we can do for beautification.
Karen, I guess my comment,
didn't cut you off. Sorry.
No, I mean, I think you all know how I feel.
is that there are, and we've started to toss around some things, planters and other things. I think there are other ways we can spend money that will make a bigger splash than what people are walking on. And I think benches and flowers, and some sort of planters, signage, keeping the parks looking really nice and getting new signs for our parks. I think those are all things that have a bigger appeal, I would, from my vantage point, than what I'm walking on. And so, bricks can be great, but a planter is going to catch my eye more than whether it's bricks or concrete.
And I guess I'm just asking folks at this table to remember this conversation when we talk about
how
much money we're gonna be spending on other things, because I hear excuses all the time. I'm sorry, not excuses. I hear things all the time, we can't do that because of snow plowing. And there's usually a lot of reasons why we can't do some things, and so we're just gonna have to be creative in another avenue. I just ask folks to do that.
There's a big option though that comes with benches and the big cement planters and things that we're talking about. Ashland's had them off I know I've seen them up on 3rd there. Spooner's got beautiful ones that have lasted through the years. those are things too that you do great fundraising with and you get people to sponsor, like, I'd sponsor a bench, you know?
Yeah, right.
So there's those sorts of other ways to get monies through this process of beautification on Mayfield Street and just us coming up with money to do it.
Yeah.
Lauren?
Yeah, well, to that point, I've been trying to figure out how do you, go and reach out to community members with, new ideas to support something like the fired brick. If you only have till tomorrow, but, I feel like there could be some other ideas, whether it is, cost sharing with the community by fundraising or with starting at the very center of town, starting at Washington or Central, and as long as there's consecutive landowners along the way that we are willing to contribute or proactively help raise money for it, can we choose to omit the cement there in favor of brick? Because that could take a while to have a plan come together, to come up with funds other ways.
Well, and then the question that immediately comes to my mind is, who's gonna lead the effort to do fundraising? Because that's just not something that is in, a realistic, timeframe for
This is a
people.
hypothetical, and
Sure.
there were some motivated.
But that, of course, my mind always goes to who's gonna do it.
Absolutely, right.
And do we have enough time to do it?
With everything, and that's the question, is that be, I guess, an engineer question, is this something that could be changed down the road? I mean, before it gets poured? Sorry, Scott.
While Scott is gathering his thoughts, I'm gonna just say one
I
thing.
can see Scott is struggling to answer that question or waiting for me to jump in and say something.
That was his delay tactic. Do you have a comment, Mike? Or no?
Yeah, from a decision standpoint, can you switch it from concrete to brick later through the design process? Yes. If they know that it's going to be concrete, that's a pretty simple change because all you're doing is removing some concrete and substituting in a new item. It'll come down to the negotiations with the DOT on the state municipal agreement because for the added cost, they will require an updated SMA agreement to say that the city will be responsible for that added cost, whatever that is. But if you were to say we just white concrete for now and reserve the right to, or vet the idea of a brick in that location, I think that keeps the DOT moving. And if that decision doesn't happen until, if it happens before letting, that's a pretty simple fit or swap. If it happens after letting, then it becomes a change order and it's going to be more costly. So there is a period of time here that you could visit this and decide if you just went with the concrete tonight.
When is letting, what is that? I mean,
Letting is the fancy word that DOT uses for bidding.
Letting the bid.
And with 24 construction, I believe this is scheduled for November of 23.
No, it will be.
Oh, that's right.
It's gonna be early, so that's why they're putting, because we're pushing close to a year out from letting this project.
Right, because of the paving of the detour road.
So that's done before the project starts. Go ahead, Carl, and then Mary.
I guess I would be against putting the brick down in view of the fact that I face planted on an EMS run on brick not too long ago. And so I don't think it'd be a good idea.
Heightened abrasion.
Yeah, they don't stay flat.
They don't stay flat.
You have an accident report on that?
It's in Bookers County, but that's.
Yeah, I
that's
was,
pretty much like for me.
yeah.
And-
I face plan hard.
Mary?
Yeah, along those lines, I mean, I can use different sections. We can watch the sidewalks in town that are up like this and cracked and some stay down. I mean, and they were put in correctly. It's a problem that will happen in our environment. And no offense meant here, but I think some decisions we have to stop pushing down for the next meeting and the next meeting, because there's gonna be more coming. And I think all of us envisioned, I believe we did, the color and the stamping. And I think unfortunately, we need to suck up the fact that this will be the white and let our brains go crazy and all the other things we do for beautification on Bayfield Street that won't have deadlines necessarily.
And I'm just gonna say one quick thing and then Dave. The thing that I keep coming back to is we just went to referendum to pay for our ambulance service. And we've also heard comments from our, the people who were here giving public comment about the lack of maintenance with our current parks and facilities that have deteriorated over the years. And so I keep coming back to how do we do this in a way that is fiscally responsible while at the same time looking ahead and making sure that we are visually pleasing and want to, obviously encourage people to stop here and enjoy our fine city. And what are the ways that we can do that in a way that makes sense and that we can justify? So with that, Dave.
So I just want to go on record and say that in lieu of the maintenance issues with colored and stamped concrete, I'm no longer for that, and I would also be against brick, because I think brick is going to be just the same, and also health hazard. But I was going to ask at the end of this meeting tonight that we put on the agenda for the next meeting how we go about beautifying in other ways, park benches, plantings. Whether or not we want to put trees back on our sidewalks in front of our businesses, which I don't think we should, and that kind of thing. So, with that being said, we'll talk to that about that another time.
Think of it as a blank palette. Okay, call it. Okay, all right. So the motion is to go with the non-colored concrete and the terraces. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Good discussion.
Good discussion.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate your input.
Thanks, Mike.
All right.
All right.
Next item, discussion and action on ordinance 2022-03 to establish regulations of outdoor kitchens. This is tab 6 in your packet.
So moved for the ordinance number 22-003.
I'll second it.
We had a motion by Mary. I'll give this one to Dave. Any comments, questions, or discussion?
I have one question.
Yeah.
When it says that it's permitted, outdoor shall not be permitted as an accessory uses to any other, so that means it doesn't count towards your, how many accessory buildings that you get in your property.
Correct, yeah.
It's not really a building, it's just like a little,
Structure,
like a little,
living space, permanent
whatever
living
space. I was glad to see that as part of it, so, okay, thank you.
Very good. Anything else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I don't know if I can officially do this, but seeing as though this item was brought to us by someone who's new to our community, who had a recent tragic event happen to them, I would like to have a moment of silence for that family, please. Thank you, and our hearts go out to them. Next item, discussion and action on approval of certified survey map for the creation of new lots within existing tax IDs 36422 and 32477 for lot to be sold to James Levine.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mary, second by Karen. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, tab 8, discussion and action on resolution number 22-003 to apply for funding to expand Hillside Tennis Court / close Eastside Tennis Court. And just to introduce this topic, so the Eastside Tennis Courts have been in disrepair for a while. They were in need of repair when I became mayor and have obviously continued to get worse. Part of the problem there is the drainage. Terrible drainage situation that is nearly impossible to deal with as far as its effect on the surface of the tennis court down there. Another challenge at the tennis courts on the east side are that they are not wide enough to be recognized by the USTA any longer. And so we can't even get funding through that organization to help pay for any of the work that needs to be done on those courts. And this is something that I've been thinking about for 2 years and talking with people about. And I started wondering what city of 2000 has 2 separate tennis courts. I've never heard of such a thing. And so I dug further into the history of the tennis courts, and I heard something a little different tonight. And Mr. Macra, being a history buff, maybe you have some insight into this. But my understanding was that it was a resort originally that built a resort that had the tennis court, and then someone else had the DuPont.
Down at the lower, I don't know, I'd have to look into
Sure.
it.
Okay.
I would have to look into it.
Okay, well, if you find out, give us a holler sometime. But regardless, at some point, the court was built down there by a private entity. And I'm sure it's been great. In looking at this critical juncture, when something really major needs to be done there, or the idea of moving 2 courts and expanding the ones up on the hillside, what that would do is allow us to have one really nice tennis court facility. And that would allow us to then hold tournaments where you can utilize those additional courts, which currently is very challenging to do when there are 2 separate court areas, because you do need 4 courts to have a tournament. So when I was thinking about this, what caused me to come up with this idea was 2 things: knowing that issue was there, and also the potential for the housing situation to utilize that lot somehow, whether that's for affordable housing, whether that's selling the property to someone who wants to build a home on the property. I have no idea. But the concept of an available lot in the downtown for whatever type of housing would go there was appealing, because housing is so tight in the city. At this moment, there are 2, if not 3, new short-term rental permits on our docket that are coming in. So we're losing housing, and this is maybe a spot where some sort of housing could go. Now, I want to alleviate some fears that, there's a plan in place or anything to expand that housing facility that's next to the tennis courts. Because right now, as it stands, the density requirement would not allow that to happen. And so that's something that the Plan Commission is going to be looking at as far as what would be an appropriate density for that neighborhood. So that is something that is going to be looked at and talked about, and I would encourage folks to, give their input on that when the Plan Commission looks at that item. But for right now, we really just need to focus on the possibility of having an improved facility for tennis. And when I met with the two contacts for the tennis group in town, Betty Swiston and Don Janicek, they were both excited. They thought this would be great. Betty said, "It's been my dream." And she is the one who teaches our kids and others tennis in town, along with others, who are involved in the program. So that was exciting to hear that they liked that idea. And then we got a cost estimate, and it's, a little higher than I thought it would be to do what we're looking at doing up there. The Parks Committee looked at it and thought it sounded like a good concept to consolidate and make a really nice facility that we could actually not only utilize for our residents, but we'll actually attract people to come to town for tournaments and add the pickleball element in an official way with their own pickleball court and having additional striping on the new court, also for pickleball. So it's giving us everything that we want, but it's in one place instead of in two. What was the other thing I was going to say? Oh, so funding options. So looking at funding options, there are a lot of little pots of money that we're looking to help pay for this. And another one that wasn't listed on your memo is the school itself. I had a conversation with Dr. Wider, and he committed to helping with the project. No dollar amount has been discussed, but the school would also support that because the school utilizes the tennis courts for not only their summer programs, but he said that they would also utilize it for triad class for pickleball, and especially being, in proximity to the school up on the phone. And so, so the funding looks like it's going to come together pretty well between the Washburn Community Education Foundation, potentially Sean Bursa Fund, the school, the ADLP grant through the DNR, and then the parks budget money that was already put aside for a resurfacing / improvement. So with that said, I would look for a motion one way or the other to lead us into a discussion.
I would make a motion to support the pursuit of the grants and the development of the hillside area for the design presented here with while for the time being retaining Eastside Park until further discussion can be had, as I see these as 3 issues really compiled into one.
Second. So the motion is to apply for funding to expand Hillside Tennis Court, but not to close the Eastside Tennis Court.
Correct. This might mean diverting funds still, but even for right now, saving money on tearing it up, because this is an asset to so many people. But there is equally support by the entire community for an improved park up there. But that court, that fenced area, serves many purposes and is important to a lot of people, and with the population density that it has, this is why I would put this in the motion, and to retain the east side tennis courts for now until further discussion. But yeah, I could say more about that. I guess I need a few seconds.
Okay. Any questions? Jen?
we don't, I mean, we can separate the issues right now, right? I mean, because really, we want, the grant is due May 1st.
Correct.
So I think,
Multiple of them, I think, are doing first.
yeah, I just want to make sure we're okay separating the issue, but, yeah, that's all I have to say.
Okay, anyone else?
And housing is another.
And we're not even looking at that yet.
Which is why I think.
Correct.
I just want to make clear, though, they are not even apples and oranges. They are two so beyond totally separate ideas. And having received multiple phone calls and appearances at my house and whatever, you know, anything to do with housing, as was talked about tonight, not to move forward with anything remotely close to that, just so we're all clear there would be.
And there could be some compromise. I feel like that is entirely possible.
And there's no plan. There's no proposal.
No, I know that, but it's out there. I mean, you put it in your letter, and it was in the daily press, so people are already concerned about it, and that's why they're asking us to take drives and do all of that sort of thing. So I'm all for moving this forward. It's, you know, been talked about forever and a day. More not talked about, but dreamed about. And tournaments be fun up there. Have tournaments again in town, so.
And some parking.
So we're applying for a grant, and if approved and we receive the grant, we'd be stupid not to accept the grant, to do this. But we just got done talking about maintenance. And if we're not gonna remove, now we're gonna have 3 courts. Right, and so we're gonna have to maintain a 3rd one, right, which we can't maintain 2. So, I mean, it's, you know, if we're applying for this, are we wasting our time? If we don't make a decision tonight to remove the one on East Third, are we spinning our wheels, applying for grants and wasting our time?
We can choose to tear it up later.
No, I get it, but if we get the grant, then we're gonna build the court, and then if we choose not to tear out the court later, now we're gonna have 3.
So, it's a good point, and I was not anticipating this option of separating that out, so I haven't thought about this at all in that way. And I don't know if Jerry or Tony has anything to say about the potential, if we didn't for some reason tear out the lower courts, is there a way to somehow utilize those just for pickleball or something like that, where it wouldn't be as,
I was just going to add that, so the east side courts are at least 50 years old, and speaking with the contractor, with Tennis Unlimited, when I got the quote from JCS, that is a concrete court over there. They last about 50 years, so it's at its look. The hillside court one that we have now, I think that that's also concrete. My guess is it's around 20 years old, so it's at least 30 years on that.
Or 30 years old and 20 years on that.
Or 20,
Yeah.
40 years.
Yeah.
And then
Is it closer to 40 years
Oh,
old?
yeah, for sure. I mean, we had lessons up there when I was doing that. So.
on that cement court?
Yeah.
And then a new one would have a life expectancy of 50 years.
Hold on, let's get Jerry here, and then we'll.
I actually stepped up to the microphone tonight. I will say that last year, it was brought to my attention like in late August, the maintenance on actually both tennis courts. And to be honest with you, driving through town and I'm like checking everything out, for some reason I was oblivious to the condition of the tennis courts, the netting and stuff. And by the time we were able to make those corrections, we were already outside to that window. So this year, we do have it set up on the schedule, and we do have one of our returning summer help, and one of their goals on their work list is that those tennis courts will be weed whacked every week. We'll get up there, we'll make sure they get weed whacked. There's new netting there to be put up, and that information from the maintenance guys that are mowing, that they keep us abreast on, you know, the kind of condition I try to keep an eye on everything, but somehow last year, I don't know how, but when I got that about the trees growing up and the weeds were in the cracks, I went by, I was like, how did I miss this? And, it was just something that had happened, but, so we tried to make those corrections, but it was a little late last year. So this year, moving forward, we'll be paying a little more attention to them and maybe get a handle on what the maintenance is moving forward. But then again, with a new facility, your maintenance isn't gonna be as high as trying to maintain an older system. The tennis court on Third Street over there is, when I went down there and looked at it, I mean, it's really in rough shape, a lot of cracks. I mean, trying to maintain and keep the weeds just from growing in that, tennis court is, and once you do get the weeds gone, you have a crack 3/4 to an inch wide by an inch deep. And no matter how much tar you try to put in there, it just pushes it back out. So, and that's not, a very good surface for playing on.
And what about the stormwater down there? I walked down there today and, took a look, and I don't understand, like, our stormwater, we don't have like the drainage, what are those called? What are they called?
Catch basins.
Catch basins, so we don't have the catch basins down there. And, it is, it's all over the city, but I mean.
All
is
I
there
can
anything
tell
that
you
we
is
can
anything
do?
with drainage, so actually where the tennis court is at, last fall I was back there because a tree had came down, just at the corner back there, there's a drainage ditch that actually runs right behind that tennis court. It's huge, but so much foliage is overgrown and the trees have all fallen down. I looked it up, but I don't believe we have a drainage easement to go in there and clean that out that I could find. There is drainage there, it just hasn't been maintained, but again, everything's gonna take work, and to get in there and do it, then you gotta take a look, property owner's permission, and, what is it gonna take to clean it up? That's part of our stormwater, we're moving forward with that, and as these issues come up, all we can do is go out, take a look at them, try to figure something out how we're gonna tackle them, and, moving forward. But always, you gotta start on the downside and work your way up.
So Jerry, would you think along those same lines, is it better to leave them up and know what you're dealing with in terms of stormwater, or to take them down and not know what you're gonna run into?
You mean the courts or the?
Yeah, the courts. Like if we were to just say, if we were to take the courts up, is it the devil you know or the devil you don't know? And is it better to leave them just because we know how it's draining now? Or would it be better if we took them out and you you certainly have your porous surface then? I don't
like to answer anything without taking a look into it first. So if I have that and I go take a look, I can give you an answer that's actually has some merit behind it.
Okay.
So,
Well, I feel like in terms of drainage, engineers, whenever you put in any kind of, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like the drainage issue can be addressed, like parking probably can be addressed, because there is a parking lot behind the apartment building there. They're just not using it. And so there's a muddy mess where everybody parks along the roadway. And so there's definitely some things that I think could be addressed at a future time. But I do think we need to have more information and more collecting of, community support and discussion on options for that east area before we make a decision. So that's what I'm in support of tonight. Sure. But I do think there's lots of opportunity and lots of options there.
So with that, I'm just gonna remind us of thanks, Jerry. Karen, go ahead.
Jen, I guess I'm interested, are you thinking that there are additional grant funds that could be found for the courts on East 4th, on 3rd?
I don't think we should have a bunch of tennis courts. I'm not saying exactly for a tennis court.
Oh, okay.
I'm just saying there's lots of options for different things there. And like Mary talked about earlier, I think that maybe some of the publicity and some of the things that went out there kind of directed that it was like already set that we were doing one thing, when really,
that was just an idea.
I think
it was an
as
epiphany.
idea. And people see the word idea, then make it sound like it's a given.
Right.
And
Well, I was just so excited that I had this idea.
And I love the idea, and you put a lot of effort into it, the kind, I feel, and I really want to show that I appreciate that, especially because it is about improvement and progress. I have a list here of, that I'm not going to take more time on, if I can get support on at least tabling the conversation about what to do with the East Tennis Court. I am totally supportive of, and I think most people are, of diverting the funds that would take to resurface and keep that a working tennis court to the improvements on Hillside, assuming that the grants come through. And then I think there are multiple ideas of what could happen there, and there might be money in it that the neighborhood would like in a single or two-family home. But there are a lot of other issues such as parking and traffic and that I think should be addressed.
Okay, so our motion is to apply for funding to expand the Hillside Tennis Court, period.
Can I ask, so this is specific that you're approving resolution? That wasn't mentioned.
So does the resolution
But the
include?
resolution is a requirement of the DNR grant.
Oh, sure, okay, so does the resolution include anything about taking out the East Side Tennis Court? Okay, good.
It's only
So,
for the-
just to clarify, is the motion to approve the resolution which allows us to apply for the funding?
Number 22-003.
Yes. Okay. Tom?
Moving that tennis court up on the hill and allowing tournaments is a win for Washburn because we are a tourist economy, and that would increase tourism coming into the city and going into the local businesses. That would help the local businesses out, not the city as a whole.
Although it is an amenity for residents that I think would be valued by existing and potential new residents as well.
I'm all for it. Let's not do nothing right now with that, let's move
Sure.
these tennis
Yep.
courts.
Okay, any other questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, next item, discussion and action on resolution number 22-002 for the extension of tax increment district number 2 for 1 year to fund a future affordable housing project or for the termination of TID number 2.
Move to extend, how do you put it, for 1 more year?
Uh-huh.
How do you want it said? Extension of TID number 2.
To fund a future affordable housing project. I think that's the only reason we can't extend the project, is if it were to be used for that.
As I understand it, there is no repercussions for doing it. It's only potential for possibilities to be able to do it.
And there's no time limit, I don't think, on spending those dollars, so it would just be set aside, so if someday you want to do, and affordable could mean workforce, I believe, housing projects specifically.
I'll second that.
Okay, so motion by Laura and second by Tom to extend TID number 2 for 1 year to fund a future affordable housing project. Any questions, comments, or discussion on that item? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next item is discussion and action on renewal of lease agreement of Thompson's West End Park Boat Ramp area for North Coast Community Sailing. Jacob Kaiser, petitioner. Jacob, welcome.
Oh, you had to wait that first time?
I bet you learned a lot, didn't you?
Yeah, I am so sorry, we have to move that up on the agenda. I'm looking at, who is that guy? So,
That's the order we normally have, and then the requests come after the business, so thank you for waiting and.
Yep, not a problem.
I'd make a motion for the renewal of lease agreement for 1 year.
a second.
Okay, motion by Mary and a second by Jen. And Jacob, what can you tell us about the program? How much does it get used?
So obviously the last couple of years have been pretty weird.
Yeah.
So last year we had 70 youth come through.
Nice.
And so we subsidized the rate to locals in the 4-county area. So that went to about 75% of our participants. So we fundraise and get grants to do that. This year we already have 50 people signed up. 2 of our sessions are completely full. already going into the summer. So it is going, I think we're going to have a lot of people this year, which is really exciting.
Do you know, like, what the highest number of participants you've had?
I don't know that number. I came in after the past summer. So, you know, it would peak probably around 150 if we can fill everything. And, you know, and then we can bring in potentially some of those other groups in those weird weeks where there's other things going on where we can't run our traditional program.
I'm thinking about, did we make any changes last year to the area, or was it just the typical area that we normally?
Last year, we moved their sheds closer to the water to reroute the trail around it. Before that, the walking trail was going between the beach and the cliff. So we moved all that quick.
Cleaned it up quite a bit and consolidated everything together, so it wasn't so.
Yes, and we removed some benches at my request at the end of the season, and have some maintenance projects on the sheds for the spring.
It's looking a lot better. Appreciate that.
Nice. Anything else you would like to share, or does anyone have any questions for Jacob? Two, so I saw Jen first and then Tom.
No, I think my comment is, both my kids went through the program, super supportive of it. I think it's great. I think it's great in Washburn. I think it's a great location because it's the beach. My only fear is, as you know, our beaches are getting more and more, use. I mean, that used to be kind of not used down there, and now it's getting more and more used. So I think we're going to have not issues, but I think in the future we might want to think about moving somewhere else and stuff like that. I really think it's a great area because of the sandy beach, but there's also some competition there. But I appreciate all the improvements. I think it looks a lot better. And my only question for you is, I know last year it was probably low use and you didn't feel like there was any conflicts, but I think just kind of this year, just kind of keep your eye open for people coming, seeing you, leaving, like, oh, there's a big class there, we're not gonna go there, So I just ask that we kind of monitor that this year, and maybe we just talk a little bit more in the future. That's all I have.
Tom?
My concern is the parking down there, because I got people coming up to me who are complaining about put their boats in West End. Some of these people have been putting their boats in there for 40 years, and they're saying they can't park down there because it's all jammed up with sales stuff.
And will that be alleviated to some extent by the fact that that parking area will be usable this year? Because last year, weren't they doing construction on the boat launch for a long time?
They've been complaining before that.
Okay. So parking is an issue. You're talking about people with boat trailers then and that kind of thing?
Yes.
Is that overflow area used for boat trailer parking at all currently?
Well, the past couple summers, that's been packed with campers.
Who's there first? I suppose.
I mean, is there a place down there we can direct parents then to park, after they've dropped kids off? That would be better. I mean, we're willing to work on that. We just kind of need to know where to send people, that they're out of the way.
It wouldn't be bad to just have them go park over by the playground.
Yeah, that would be, the people that have been launching their boats there for years and years and years would appreciate that very much.
If we could keep that more, boat launch parking, that would be great. If people wouldn't mind moving their vehicle. It's not that far, I guess.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's something that's easy. We can give parents maps and stuff, and newsletter before they come and redirect them.
Thank you.
Well, the one thing we have down there is a lot of land.
Yes.
There's plenty of place for parking. We just have to provide it.
All right, very good. Well, thank you for working with us on that. And does anyone else have any questions?
I'm super excited. Great program.
Comments, discussion? Excellent. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you and welcome back.
Yeah. Thanks for your patience.
I'm Tony.
All right, our next item is discussion, we're powering through, no dinner break, Laura, sorry.
Discussion and action on special event request to temporarily restrict parking on South Second Avenue West and Harborview Drive for North Coast Car Show and use of Omaha property for parking on July 30th, 2022. Tammy DeMars, petitioner.
I move approval of the special event request for restriction of parking and making parking available on the Omaha property.
Second.
There was a motion by Karen and a second by Mary. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item, discussion and action on use of Thompson's West End Park, Memorial Park, Wickdall Park, and the Coal Dock, closure of portions of North 3rd Avenue West and South 4th Avenue West, and relaxation of open container and noise ordinances, all at certain times during Brownstone Block Party activities, July 29th through 31st, 2022, Washburn Area Chamber of Commerce petitioner.
I would make a motion to, accept those, to accept those closures, given the list though, because what was listed here, as Jen just pointed out, the use of the coal dock is not on our agenda, but it is as presented on the Washburn page, chamber page.
We have it here on coal, and the coal dock
is there.
Where?
At the end of the first sentence. At the end of the first line.
Oh, okay, yes, I didn't put my glasses on.
So we do have the coal dock in there.
Okay, so as presented to accept.
Second.
Motion by Mary and a second by Karen. Are there any questions, comments, or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Melissa. Next item is alcohol licensing matters. The first of which is discussion on potential amendments to beer garden ordinance. So, the question came up at a plan commission meeting based on Martini Bar wanting to add an enclosed fenced-in beer garden area, or we call it a beer garden, but beer garden area. And the ordinance limits that space to up to 50% of the interior usable space in the building. And we all know that that building is so tiny that it really, makes it very small, that the area that you can have outdoors. So we wondered if that's something we want to look at, making some sort of an amendment to the ordinance that could allow for something. I was trying to think of how this could go, and it could go something like this. Up to 50% or up to a certain square footage, as long as the area is still in sight of the bartender. Because that's the big concern of Chief Johnson. And we don't actually have that in the ordinance where it says that a beer garden has to be within sight of the bartender. However, I think that was the intention of limiting the amount of space that we allow, up to 50% of the interior space, to try to help with that, being able to keep it, smaller. There are many other communities. I was looking at everybody's beer garden ordinances, thinking about this, and a lot of them do say specifically in the ordinance within sight. There are people that potentially would be affected by this, and Bo Bellinger emailed with questions about this ordinance. That specific situation is a little complicated because it's a different type of license and permitting, and
there's been COVID, and so everything's been a little relaxed with the outdoor spaces and things like that. So this is just a discussion tonight, so that those types of things can all come up if we are considering, amending the ordinance in some way. So, does anyone have any specific ideas or comments, or Dave?
I would just, the insight of the bartender, I don't know what difference that's gonna make, quite honestly.
I can tell you if you
If
want.
a kid's gonna drink, a kid is gonna drink, and if someone's gonna serve it to them over a fence, they're gonna serve it to them over a fence.
Well, and that's exactly what the point is that the bartender can watch that sort of thing happening or not.
They're gonna get their six pack somewhere and go drink it somewhere.
I-
It's just the nature of it, I mean, it's gonna happen, and I.
And that's completely, yeah. I mean, that's a good thing to discuss,
And so, I'm all for relaxing some of this, and allowing, if we're gonna restrict one person because they have to be within sight of the bartender, I don't know if that's really, is it worth that type of restriction when it doesn't really matter?
Well, and the other thought is, if we lean to the more lenient side and there become problems, we can always make it more restrictive. So.
I agree with Dave. I feel like anything we can give to, people sitting outside, we can maybe bring Ken in sometime and see like what his true concerns are. Has this been an issue? Have we had any issues? Like, there's outdoor seating at Duluth. I feel like relaxing this and giving our business owners some flexibility in outdoor spaces in our community is super important.
Because ultimately, they are responsible if somebody drinks
Right.
their beer and wine. And I don't think that'll work for Duluth. I don't think it will work for Snug either. So,
Be their discretion,
Right.
right?
somebody's gonna say.
It might be different if it's a restaurant, I want to say. A beer garden, I think, and I don't know if you know this, Scott, but there might be some difference if it's a restaurant, but still, regardless. We have plenty of space to utilize. So I don't know, we'll have to think about if anyone has any specific suggestions for ways to make that a little less restrictive. Knowing that there's one issue in particular, where, he could utilize a little bit extra space there. There's only limited space where you can go because there's a hill there in the way.
Yeah, he specifically wanted to extend it to, over towards the birch tree more.
So there's gonna be a picnic table
Yeah,
under the
and
tree,
he
like
wasn't
everybody
able to
sits
because
there.
of the square footage requirements.
Huh?
I think that should be relaxed. My parents, when they had a bar back in the sixties down in Hayward, they had a beer garden, and they had a bee. It was a bee license then. It was straight beer in that bar. And that was a screened-in porch, and it was like 20 feet wide and was the length of the bar. And they didn't have any problems with anything going on.
One concern I know that Chief Johnson has is, when you can't see the beer garden and there is a way in and out. That specific situation is problematic in his mind because it really makes it easy for people to, come in and out of the back way where nobody is seeing who's going in and out.
Did any one of us ever have a problem getting alcohol at 16 years old? I had no problem at all.
I think it's almost easier now to get a big ID.
Even without it.
Not that anyone uses those. Yes, Karen.
But we're really looking at two issues. One, the size, and then the second one, whether or not we want to change the provision regarding the site.
And there's not
I
many.
think the size is something that maybe we should look at changing because, as you recommended, either 50% of the current footprint or
or some, some amount that I don't know, that would make sense.
Yeah, we're all in
We're all,
agreement.
we're all,
Yes.
seem like we're
Yeah.
very open, so I
Yeah.
feel like the planning commission or what,
I
I don't know next steps, but.
Is that what we're, I think what I asked, or Scott, was to figure out legally, if we could, if there's any state requirements or anything, which is always something that.
In terms of size?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
whatever alcohol licensing issues from the state, whatever they require, if there's no restriction on our end, I don't see why we shouldn't allow somebody to have as large of an area as they see fit, provided it doesn't, take away any of their required off-street parking spaces.
I've been to plenty of them where you have to go through the bar to get there and you can't get, like you said, can't get out.
Right,
They're like
yeah. Some of
enclosed
them
in.
are enclosed,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the way my parents will set up.
Which might address some of the issues, that it's still
That
easy
can
to
fit.
get over a fence or around a tree or
Right,
whatever.
it's not like
it
that's
is.
gonna contain somebody who's.
No, no, right.
The Martini Bar has a perfect opportunity to put some rooftop above there as well, Say
Grass, huh? Newer grass.
Use something up there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, good.
And I think, I don't know if it's in ours or if it's in the state, where a fence is required of at least 4 feet high. Might be the state statute that, along with, being able to have a beer garden. So that would be something that has to be followed regardless of what our ordinance says.
Yeah, wasn't there something that they had, like the Toulouse had to build, like
The fence.
the fence?
Yeah.
I thought that was a big deal.
I believe there was a change. Our ordinance doesn't at this time require specifically a fence. It requires some demarcation of the area, which is logically done by a fence, but it doesn't have to be a fence.
Unless the state statute requires it for a beer garden permit, which I thought it did.
According to the state, so the state, as I have it in the memo, alcohol application licenses must describe the premise where the alcohol beverages is sold and stored. That's the inside of the building. Regarding zoning, the state leaves that up to the municipality. So we can enact the zoning for the size of the buildings, if there's outdoor premises, what the stipulations of those outdoor premises are. We could say no beer gardens, and then, there's nothing with or without the state law that gives us, they leave that to the municipality.
With our limited amount of licenses that we can have to accommodate the huge influx of seasonal residents and visitors to the area, it would be beneficial to have as much outdoor seating as we could. But
So the city would decide if they can drink outside, serve outside. If that is, that's fine. The applicant, the bar, would need to have that listed on their premise as where alcohol is being sold and served.
so if we want something like this to be enacted in time for the next round of licenses to go out, would the permit go with the license?
Those that are serving outside already have that identified on their application, because that's the premise where alcohol is being served.
Sure, okay, so it is kind of timely if we're gonna do this.
The only one
Do
that
it
is
in
serving
May?
outside that does not have it on their license currently is the Martini Bar, because they opened it up and used the temporary extension,
Sure.
the COVID,
Right.
which had no time limit.
Right.
So this are to be sold and stored. So it's selling something and being served something, two different things.
But no, yes, no, it's not. They're being served it, but they're buying it, so it's being served.
Okay. But if they bought it inside and take it outside,
The establishment needs to have that premise listed on their location where alcohol is being sold and served.
So,
it'd be a lawyer.
So theoretically, can Duluth serve on the little tables they sometimes put out front?
What's
If
the
they
city
list-
ordinance with alcohol on the streets? So that's where you're coming from.
On the streets?
Sure.
Oh, unless it's fenced?
That's another question.
In the back, where they have people.
The sidewalk is not their property.
Well, we're being very generous. We feel like we want to be generous towards these businesses. So this goes to the planning and Max.
Okay.
Planning, Max, and you.
Sounds good. Any other discussion on this topic?
I think we have a feel for the sentiment, Scott.
Well, I guess I don't know if I would say, if plan commission would be the appropriate.
Oh, wherever's appropriate. I'm not pinpointing.
This would have
them
to come
either.
back here to make
Right,
the
yeah.
actual ordinance change.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if your recommendation is that we should just eliminate the 50% requirement, period. And then it comes down to a subjective, we're gonna look at each application and each request on its own merits, then that's how we will draft this ordinance to be. So that's kind of where I'm getting at.
Yeah.
The purpose of this is for me to say, what do you really want, so we can come back and put something
Oh, okay, well,
under
that
your
sounds
nose
good.
to look
Because,
at.
you know, there's just a couple of problem areas. I think that's what Ken's going after too. I think we could think of those. And that's when there is no oversight of beer it's being sold underneath the tent. But once it goes from the bartender to the person, you know, that's where they're looking to stop that. It could go over the fence, or it could go under the fence, or people can walk in and out who are minors. So I think that is kind of nice to have a discussion with this sometimes in the summertime. So I guess when it comes to declaring what kind of property they want, I know Patsy's has the smoking bar outside, and Firehouse has that attached one. But this is like the land. This is like the tables out front in Duluth, and the parking lot at Patsy's, and the parking lot at Firehouse. So, you know, in the day, we used to have to put up storm fencing.
And that's fine for an event, I think.
Correct.
Yeah.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Scott, at the last planning commission meeting, we were approving a fence, not the ordinance of alcohol. This is a city ordinance, not a zoning issue. Right, so we were just tasked with approving his fence, which we did,
Not the size of it necessarily.
but we allowed him the option to get larger if we approved his ability to do that. So I asked Scott to check into whether or not this was a state mandated rule or not. It turns out it's not. So the ordinance would be up to us, the planning commission, so.
So the question really is there something more appropriate than 50% of the interior of a building to mark that exterior? Because some buildings are teeny tiny.
Right.
And what would we recommend? What would you recommend? Because I mean, it makes like, it seems like a valid issue.
So much depends on the particular facility and the surrounding area. Each one is going to be on its own merits.
Yeah, otherwise it's arbitrary. We're
Yeah.
just picking out numbers.
So maybe we do have to look at the model one by each application.
And how many applications are we talking about? 6, 4, 12?
Oh, 12, that
I
many?
mean, how many?
But not all want beer gardens.
Well, right. I mean, at a maximum, we're looking at,
What do we have, 8 licenses?
for beer gardens?
We have 8 hard liquor licenses, yes.
So less than 10. That would have to get looked at on an individual basis. Is that, what's the word I'm thinking of? Is that a huge time suck? For each of those applications to get looked at for the premise to make sure that it makes sense and.
That would be up to the staff to approve then?
That's gonna be up to the council. You're gonna start this
We would
process
have
next
to,
month.
we would have to approve the premise for each individual.
Correct.
Gotcha, okay.
And this will be, because next month you'll have your first review of all of the alcohol licenses, and then we go, have publish the notice, and then come back in June is your final approval.
So do we even have time to change the ordinance so that people know to apply for whatever they want?
If we would come back with an ordinance change in May, that ordinance change would logically, if you approve it, would logically be published, say a week or two later. So prior to the June council meeting, in theory, yes. It would certainly be in effect prior to the actual license taking effect.
However, they would need to have that stipulated on their license if they have an outdoor premise. Those that are currently serving outdoor premises have that on their license.
But the
So it would be
license,
anybody new that doesn't have that listed.
okay.
And if they came after the fact, they were approved license just for indoor space, and then wanted to add outdoor space, they would need to come back to council for approval to serve in that outdoor space. So they just have to come back.
Or if anybody wanted to change it.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, which I would think we'd want to look at anyway.
So are we saying that we want to just get rid of the 50% part and look on a case-by-case basis at what's appropriate for that particular?
I would say it could probably start with the planning commission and make sure that it wasn't gonna take up, well, I don't even know if it needs to start there, but more of their parking, off-street parking that's required, if there's any required. And which I'm assuming most of the places don't have any required off-street parking. So, they're not large companies.
So you're saying each individual thing would have to go to planning commission? Or you're saying planning commission should talk about what this
No,
would say?
well, I mean, I don't even, I think maybe I misspoke. I don't even know if it needs to start here. The only concern would be, like I said, I don't know if we need to restrict any signs at all, as long as it doesn't affect any other ordinance or zoning ordinance that they needed to comply with.
So we could have a list of things that would get looked at as part of the approval process, including parking,
Residential neighbors, ingress and egress, whatever.
And then, do we just allow, let's say, Duluth to have some tables out front and have people, will they be able to sit there legally and have a beer or a glass of water?
That you cannot, because that's not their property.
Sidewalk, exactly.
I'd love to have a spot on the backside, there's a porch there.
You did,
Yeah, there is.
So the premise that they, on their license, can't extend out, and that's a state regulation?
It can only be the property that they own.
Yeah.
But they don't own the sidewalk.
They don't own the sidewalk, but they have to pay to fix it if it's bad?
Don't go there.
Okay, not going there.
Well, maybe, I mean, do we need to check on it? Is it some fact? Is there some myth busting? Because I've been to plenty of places where I've sat on the sidewalk and gone out and had a beer in a lot of towns.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying you need to do it, I'm just saying like, is there something, I mean, something weird there? I don't know.
People, kids in Italy walk past kids or people drinking beer.
Let's stick to the US.
And even if we stick to the US, there's plenty of places that.
Think of Madison. There's all those places that have food out front and they have usually have a little fence around them.
But they're fenced in on their property, correct?
Not on their property, on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
One item would be, Max is still on listening to this conversation. So I know that state law would allow, because for example, we can have an open container ordinance. So you can, if the city permits it, you can have beer, open beer on a public street, but it is against state law to have open hard liquor.
But you could have beer or wine potentially.
I'm not sure about wine.
It's fine. I mean, I don't think that, is anybody asking us to have little spots out there to?
Not at this time.
Not this time.
No one knew what we were gonna discuss.
So where are we on this issue? Are we moving on?
Well, I guess my only question is if we open it to no size, is it something we're gonna regret?
No limit on the size.
Yeah, no limit, like just, if we take that out, is it something we're gonna like struggle with and be right back at here in 1 month?
Or do you make it
Well-
75% or 100%?
Correct. The immediate concern that came up, I believe that even if we went to, he didn't need much more because you didn't have that much space. I believe if we went to 60 or 75%, he would fine the immediate request. So if that's something you want to do, to still have some limitation, that's your change. Otherwise, we are going to have to then, as we work through this issue, develop what is our criteria for evaluating this.
It sounds like it would sure be easier to change the percentage and make it a cut and dry thing. And if you keep it at 75%, the parking issue shouldn't become a problem, I would think. You're still limiting it
So you
to,
got 25% that's inside.
well, and that we're not even going there.
Great, 75% sounds great.
That would be a thing. Everyone kind of
Could we take
consensus
action on
on,
that?
no,
No.
we don't have an action item.
75%.
But it seems like the consensus is that 75% maybe would be a way to go here, and then it's just cut and dry still.
And then we can see if we.
And if anything comes up, we will.
It's so easy just to change words.
And then can we check on
The alcohol
the
on the street
alcohol,
thing.
just open container?
I'm sorry.
I mean, I can walk down the street with a loaded shotgun and an AR-15 legally, with no problem. I
Yeah.
walk down
Well,
the
there are
street.
different philosophies there.
Well,
Okay.
I'm just.
So we know for sure that we want to make that change on that ordinance. Are you asking to also have that included? To relax the open container if it can be done?
I would like to see it for that.
Okay, that's something. And can it be two separate things? We can vote on them separately?
Sure.
Another question for Dave. What kind of fence did you guys approve?
It was a wrought iron fence of some sort.
He runs a
fence.
fencing business, so it's a nice fence.
Okay.
And then, let's move on.
I move approval of the issuance of a Class B and beer and Class B liquor license to Superior Shores Eat, also known as doing business as Patsy's Bar and Grill.
Second. So motion by Karen, second by Mary. Any questions, comments, or discussion on that other than yay?
Does he have his outdoor premise included in here?
That's a good question. Does he?
Does he?
No, don't forget, no.
Don't look.
It's in the application.
What? Is there an outdoor premise included?
Covered
Yes.
porch,
Yes.
woodside porch.
Excellent. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Have a great night. Oh, there is left of it.
You want to go to the D tab?
You want to meet at the door? You can access number.